Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Price, I just want to come back to the answers that you gave me regarding the PGA Tour in China and make sure that I understand where this rests currently, what the current status is. So let's see if I've got the facts right. In 2018, the PGA Tour announced a 20-year agreement for a new entity called PGA Tour China Series. 20-year agreement. This is what your spokesperson said about it just as recently as last year, 2022. Quote, the PGA Tour established a separate entity based in Beijing, China. Continuing, the PGA Tour Series China is owned and operated by the PGA Tour and supported by the General Administration of Sport of China, that's the Chinese government, and the China Golf Association. Now, you're telling me that this entity no longer exists?
Senator, I would have to get the facts for you on PGA Tour of China. I can give you...
Well, I thought you said to me just a little bit ago, I thought you said that you did one event in 2019 and it doesn't exist anymore.
From an event standpoint, that series has not operated since 2019.
Because of COVID?
It has not operated because of COVID, and we have no plans to continue that tour.
Because of COVID? Because just as recently as last year, you had events scheduled in China. You had to ultimately cancel them because of COVID, but that doesn't sound to me like you suspended your business arrangements.
I would have to check the status of the contract, Senator, but it's my understanding we have no
No, just wait a minute, though. This is important, because you told me just a minute ago when I talked about PGA Tour Series China that wasn't happening, that was gone. But now you're telling me something different. Now you're telling me that, oh, no, we still have the business arrangement. Actually, you're hemming and hawing on that. But you're saying we haven't done any events in China. Well, of course not, because of COVID restrictions. You haven't been allowed to. I'm trying to ascertain whether you still have this 20-year agreement with Chinese entities to do tour events in China. You had PGA Tour officials living in China in order to facilitate this. Do you see what I'm driving at? So my question is, does PGA Tour China, this entity that the tour owns, based in Beijing, for which you've signed a 20-year contract, does it still exist?
I can tell you two things. One is I would have to check the status of the contract. I do not believe it's currently in force, but I would have to check that, and we'll be happy to get you information on that. The second thing I can tell you is that we haven't operated since 2019, and it's my understanding that we have no plans to continue that series.
As long as COVID exists, or
Period.
And why is that?
From a business standpoint, we're not going to continue that series in China.
Okay. I think you can see what my concerns are, but just so that I'm absolutely crystal clear about it, here's my concern.
Yes.
My concern is that the communist government in China has systematically attempted to use and influence American sports organizations and lots of other entities, our media, entertainment industry, companies, lots of them. They're not shy about using leverage. And we've used the term sports washing a lot today. And I think it's applicable on this situation. And Senator Blumenthal referenced earlier the brutal crackdown in Hong Kong, which I guess I'll call it the privilege. Maybe it's the misfortune of seeing for myself firsthand on the streets there. And while that was going on, what was China doing? What was Beijing doing? They were applying maximal pressure on the NBA that had a lot of contracts very lucrative with China. The chairman mentioned Daryl Morey, at the time general manager of the Houston Rockets, who ventured the most, frankly, anodyne statement in support of the people of Hong Kong. I mean, it was the most moderate little, I think it was a tweet. For this, he was blasted by NBA players, certainly by China, by owners, by his own owner. Ultimately, he resigned. So it worries me when I see the PGA doing business with the Chinese government, subjecting its players and this association that you've lauded so much today to those same pressures from a government that is brutal, that is repressive, and that is attempting to use American institutions as a megaphone for their own totalitarian, dystopian, and frankly evil policies. When you imprison millions of people in concentration camps for the purpose of eradicating their religious beliefs and killing them, and that's what they're doing with the Uyghurs, you're an evil regime. When you treat your own people as slaves, and that's what they're doing, you are an evil regime. I don't want to see American institutions co-opted by that regime. That's where I'm coming from with this. I would hope we'd share that perspective. So I look forward to your responses in writing as to the status of your business agreement. I continue to be interested as to why on your Form 990 in both 2018 when this deal was announced and in 2020 after your event, this wasn't disclosed. I'd like to know why that is. And I'd like your assurances that your commitment that you're not going to restart this series in China and you're not going to conduct business operations with millions of dollars in financing from Chinese entities. Will you give me that commitment?
Senator, I'd be happy to give you the information on the status of our contract in China, and I'll certainly follow up with you with regard to the disclosures in the 990. You know, as I've stated, we have no intentions of continuing that series from my perspective, and I can't commit the tour for the long term. I'm not in a position to do that. But there's nothing in the short term or immediate future that, from a tournament standpoint, that we're considering doing in China.
I would just say finally, Mr. Chairman, that I think that the era in which institutions, sports leagues, businesses, when they say it with regard to communist China, that, well, we leave the politics to other people, we just don't take any position on issues, I think that time has passed. When you have a government that is as oppressive and imperial as that government is, and is doing to its people what that government is, and has designs to do to others around the world what that government wants to do, I think it's time for American companies, American institutions to stand up and be counted. And I hope that the PGA will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.